this is Warhawk Beyond 2040, and welcome to another edition of the Flash Season 8 review series. And today I am going to be talking about Episode 3, Armageddon Part 3, which is part of a 5-part crossover event, which I have just finished watching, and this was absolutely fantastic. Great follow-up to Part 2 and 1. This time, Part 3 featured Jefferson Pierce, aka Black Lightning, who showed up at the end of Part 2. And wow, this was amazing. And the ending just blew my mind. Didn't see this one coming at all. I'll get to the ending soon, but all I'm going to say is this was quite possibly Barry Allen's worst nightmare come to life. I mean, of all the things Barry doesn't want to happen, the one thing does happen. Wow. Unbelievable. This was amazing. So, basically, what's happened so far is a villain called Despero from the future has said that in 2031, Barry Allen is going to go rogue and cause the end of the world. Sounds like a Superman thing. It does. But this is about the Flash. So Barry has been trying everything he can to prevent this from happening. So Despero has warned that a great tragedy will occur and result in Barry losing his mind and turning on all of his friends and his family. And the way part 2 ended was the revelation that Joe West died 6 months ago. How? We don't know. But all is not what it seems. And we left it on a cliffhanger with Barry approaching Jefferson for help. So this episode pretty much picks up where we left off at the end of part 2 of the Armageddon crossover event. As I said, part 3 blew my mind. You know, usually when you have 5 parts, it's very difficult to keep that strong momentum going, but these guys didn't let up. And as I said in previous editions of this review series, I'm really enjoying season 8 so far. We are off to a very strong start, and I'm really starting to dig that the show is recapturing some of that classic magic that we all know and love, and we know that the show can deliver, and boy, are they delivering. So let's just get straight into it. Let's not waste any more time. Let's talk about episode 3, Armageddon, part 3. So this episode kicks off with Black Lightning questioning Barry about what's happened to prompt him to invoke injustice, and Barry gives him a brief rundown about the chaos that's been caused in the last 24 hours. Barry can't calm down and is insistent that they need to activate the Injustice Protocol and Black Lightning needs to take away his powers. Black Lightning wants to call in the others, but Barry says no. Barry just isn't listening to reason and explains that he forgot that Joe died as proof things are incredibly bad. Black Lightning reminds that if he takes his powers away, they'll be gone permanently. At Star Labs, Despero is in the Cortex trying to find Barry, while at Chester's house, the rest of Team Flash is trying to figure out what's going on with Barry. The team is making Barry and his mental health the priority, and Iris suggests that something is off about Despero. She thinks that maybe someone is framing Barry and comes armed with a video that might suggest Joe isn't dead. Iris's skepticism about Joe's death isn't well received by Cecile, who says the team will save Barry without her if she chooses to pursue her hunch. Now, this was a very powerful scene between Cecile and Iris. I was literally hanging on the edge of my seat watching this. You know, the way these two just bounced off of each other was just very, very powerful. Really enjoyed this. So after a back and forth exchange, Iris eventually leaves and Allegra goes after her. Cecile, Chester, and Caitlin work on trying to find Barry, with Cecile wanting to use her powers to look for Barry that way. She tasks Barry with building a psychic booster so she can do that. Meanwhile, Iris and Allegra go to the train station to look for clues about Joe's death. They find something a little strange in the location where Joe is supposed to have died, or more specifically, Iris does. Allegra doesn't, but does figure out where the security cameras go. They question the security guard, but he says that the data was probably lost due to a sporting event going on, and they have the straight footage there. It does appear to show that Joe did die. At a bar, Cecile meets with Top and asks for help, but Top isn't necessarily inclined to do so. Cecile makes her a deal, and Top agrees to help. Meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice, no, I'm not trying to copy Super Friends here. We then see Barry struggling with his work on the thing that will take his powers from him, and Jefferson suggests music. Barry pulls up some jazz music that Joe loved, and it prompts Jefferson to open up about Henderson's death. Barry finishes the device Jefferson needs to take his powers away, and they prepare to do so, and the process begins. As the citizen, Allegra has a breakthrough in Joe's death. She's found many strange coincidences leading to the accident. Someone was pulling the strings, but Iris no longer wants to hear it. Allegra gives her a pep talk, and just as she does, Iris starts to notice something very strange with the report. She starts to see weird particles floating up. It prompts her to hurry back to the train station. Meanwhile, we see the B team now has an amplifier as well as Top to help with the brain power aspects of things. It works, but it works a little too well. Cecile starts to get overwhelmed, but it's Top wants to continue. Top gives her some tough love and tells her to get over her emotions so she can power through. Cecile eventually lets go of her emotions and it actually works. Cecile finds Barry, but the signal shorts out. Cecile overloaded it. Meanwhile, Despero is watching. Iris then meets with Dion at the station and she tells him about the particles that she saw and she thinks that someone is messing with reality. Iris wants Dion to undo her treatment for time sickness. He's reluctant to do so, but then eventually agrees. Sure enough, Iris starts to see all of the particles. They're decaying isotopes. Someone has tapped into the negative still force to rewrite the timeline, meaning Joe should never have died in the first place. Getting interesting. Caitlin talks with Cecile about how Top tried to get her to repress her feelings and tells her about her own experiences with grief about Ronnie's death. Caitlin is worried about Cecile heading down a very dark path. As they're talking, Chester gets a notification that someone turned on the particle accelerator at Star Labs. It's Despero. Cecile and Top get hooked back onto Chester's device to search for Barry, and they find him very quickly. Cecile quickly realizes that Despero is there, and Top tries to cut a deal with Despero, and he gets into Top's head to get the Flash's location, nearly killing her. He doesn't get all the information he needs and goes after Cecile next. However, Cecile fights back and fights him off. Chester locates Barry, but they realize Despero now has as well. We then see Barry still has connections to his powers and he's eager to finish things. He tells Black Lightning what Despero told him, and now that Black Lightning knows, he wants no part in taking Barry's powers away. Barry snaps and starts hurling lightning at Black Lightning. Black Lightning still doesn't bend to Barry's demands, convinced that he's saving the world by saving one of its protectors. The pairs continue to fight each other, and then Black Lightning extends his hand, but Barry doesn't take it in good faith. They continue fighting each other until they're both lying on the ground with Oliver Queen's bow and arrow and costume knocked on the ground. And then we get a little reference about Crisis where Jefferson invokes Oliver's sacrifice to get through to Barry. However, Despero arrives just then and prepares to kill him, but Dion and Iris show up as well. Despero doesn't believe her, but Black Lightning attacks Despero to buy the Flash some time. Dion gives Barry some Steel Force energy so he can go to the future to figure out who is framing him. And then we see Central City in 2031, where Barry arrives in the future to find out what is going on and finds a private event called the West Party. When he walks into the engagement party, we see Barry's worst nightmare has come true. and we see Iris and Eobard Thawne with wearing the face of Harrison Wells and everybody else there, from Ryan Troy to Ryan Wilder, Chester, Alex Danvers, all present, and they all see Barry Allen there present at this party, very unhappy to see him. So it looks like we are seeing the wedding of Iris West and Eobard Thawne. Holy cow! And that's how we end episode 3, Armageddon Part 3. What can I say? Unbelievable. What an epic way to end Part 3 of the Armageddon crossover. I mean, the worst thing that could ever happen, the worst nightmare for Barry, is seeing Iris West marrying his most hated enemy, Eobard Thawne. Now, everybody knows Eobard Thawne is a thorn in Barry's side, and has been from the very beginning, since the night he murdered his mum. And to go to the future and see his hated enemy marrying the love of his life, that would send anybody crazy. I mean, big time. This episode, this part 3, was just mind blowing. What more can you say, really? I mean, I've really enjoyed this a lot, and it's always great to see Tom Cavanagh, and just him standing there drinking wine and champagne with that big smirk on his face, looking at Barry, because I win, Barry. It's just incredible. I can't wait for part 4. Part 4 needs to hurry up and get here because I want to know what happens next, but it's starting to look like it's Eobard Thawne is behind all of this. Makes sense. But there still could be a twist. But we will find out soon enough, and I can't wait. This was absolutely brilliant. So that's going to be it from me. I'm going to wrap this up now. What was your thoughts on the Armageddon Part 3? Did you enjoy it? What did you think of Barry going into the future and seeing Iris West engaged to Eobard Thawne? What happened there? How did this happen? What do you think happened? And also, do you think Joe West is still alive? And if so, where could he be? And also, what did you think of Black Lightning's role in this one? And what was your thoughts on Jefferson and Barry referencing the events of Crisis? Do you think Jefferson's going to play a part in part 4 of the crossover event? And also, what plans does Despero have for Barry Allen? You know what to do, guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see all of you next time for another edition of the Flash Season 8 review series, where I am going to be talking about Episode 4, Armageddon Part 4, which is part of the 5 parts crossover event, which I am really looking forward to seeing, especially with the way this one ended. Should be a really good one. I can't wait. Bring it on. So until next time, take care, everybody, and stay safe. And as always, thanks for listening.